Alright, we are live, ladies and germs. Tonight we're going to be reviewing the GEICO 500 from Talladega. Certainly one of the most anticipated races of the year. What did I think of it? Well, you'll find out here in a second. But we've got a lot to go over this week, so let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packer Man, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel live race review. Tonight we're going to be reviewing the 2021 GEICO 500 from Talladega Super Speedway in Alabama. So this is our 80th episode of The Fuel, and the title of tonight's episode, Six Pack for Kez, because he became the fourth driver tonight to get 6 career wins at the Talladega Super Speedway, which is actually the first headline. Keselowski scores 6th Talladega win, which I'm not really upset at as far as, him winning the race. It was just disappointing and a bit of a buzzkill because there was a lot of other different stories that would have been a lot more interesting other than Keselowski scoring his 6th career Talladega win. Like, who gives a shit? It's basically status quo shit and it's whatever. But we'll get into all that when we get into it. But some other headlines that came out of this race. Because of Keselowski's victory, we now have 9 winners in 10 races so far this year. Only Truex has been a repeat winner in 2021, which is just crazy. So this crazy season of parity continues. But we are going to Kansas next week, so we'll see what happens there. But am I surprised that Keselowski won this race? Not really. I mean, he's a super speedway master. But, it is what it is. But another thing that was quite the thing in this race, speeding penalties. They were alarmingly abundant in this race. There were 2 occasions during this race where someone got a speeding penalty, and then on the pass-through to serve the penalty, they sped again. So, yeah, speeding penalties were a pretty big deal in this race at Talladega. So, but we're going to get into all that here in a minute. But we got a couple of other headlines to get into. One that's kind of related to this race, although it was kind of outside the thing, and another one which was a very serious matter from the ARCA race. I know we don't really talk about ARCA all that much here on The Fuel, but there is something that happened from that race that needs to be discussed. But the first headline outside of that, Jennifer Jo Cobb, there was some headlines that kind of came out of this where Jennifer Jo Cobb was basically not allowed to run the Cup race. She was scheduled to run with Rick Ware Racing, I believe in the 15 car for this race, but she was barred from competing for I think it was like a lack of experience or something like that. And Steve Phelps defended NASCAR's decision to basically bar Jennifer Jo Cobb from competing in the Cup Series at Talladega, which I mean, on the one hand, I mean, I can kind of understand it because Jennifer Jo Cobb, let's be honest here, isn't that good of a driver, and she's also damn near in her 50s. So, you know, on the one hand, you know, I can kind of understand it, but on the other hand, if you're not going to let her compete, then why in the flying fuck are you allowing guys like, oh, I don't know, Quinn Houff and Garrett Smithley and, you know, fucking Rick or Cody Ware, you know, some of these slow ass motherfuckers, especially from Rick Ware Racing. I mean, why are you letting these guys compete when it's pretty clear that they can't really drive worth a fuck, and more often than not, they're just moving chicanes out there. So, you know, this is just yet another case of NASCAR just completely, they are consistently inconsistent. You know, it's just fucking stupid. You know, because if you're going to keep Jennifer Jo Cobb from competing because of lack of experience and, you know, all that shit, then, you know, some of these other guys that, you know, like a Cody Ware who, you know, has been wrecking his fucking teammates seemingly every week. You got guys like Quinn Houff, who's been a fucking moving chicane out there. I mean, why are you letting these guys compete? You know, I mean, what the fuck here? And this kind of, you know, ties back into what I said last week during the Richmond review. There needs to be some fucking standards set for the Cup Series. Okay, it's got to be like what the FIA has with Formula One. You know, you got to earn so many points in lower tier series to be able to qualify for a super license. NASCAR needs to start implementing something like that. Now, would they be able to come up with a perfect system, you know, to determine, you know, who would qualify for a Cup Series event? No. No system is perfect. But any system would be better than this fucking bullshit that we have going on right now. You know, I mean, it just makes no fucking sense to me. You know, she has plenty of starts in the Truck Series. I mean, she started at Talladega in the Truck Series, so, you know, why the fuck are they not allowing her to run in the Cup Series? You know, if it's lack of experience. I mean, the reasoning makes no goddamn sense. And it just underlines how fucking inconsistent NASCAR is with everything they do. I mean, this is just par for the course for them. But it's incredibly fucking irritating. And it just continues to underline the fact that we need some kind of standard, you know, like a system in place to determine who should qualify for the Cup Series. Because let's be honest here, guys like Quinn Houff and Cody Ware, they shouldn't be driving a fucking Cup car to begin with. The only reason why they're in a Cup car is because of that money that they bring in. That's the only fucking reason. And quite frankly, it's ridiculous. But moving on from that, there was another kind of serious thing that happened from the ARCA race yesterday. Derek Lancaster had a horrendous crash on the backstretch, which set his car ablaze, and apparently he was unable to escape from the car for about half a minute to a minute. And as a result of that, he suffered some significant burns to both his arms, his neck, and his face. And apparently he also inhaled some of the flames, which caused damage to his lungs as well. So he's currently on a ventilator. He's going to be on a ventilator for the next probably 48 hours or so that the doctors can determine how much damage has been done to his lungs. But this kind of reminds me of what happened to Niki Lauda at the Nürburgring all those years ago. Of course, that was before my time, but, you know, you see it all the time, you know, on Formula One's YouTube channel where they, you know, kind of outline how Niki Lauda was able to recover from that and continue to contend for world championships and Formula One race wins, despite the fact that he was horrendously burned in that accident. This definitely feels like a similar sort. Whether or not Derek Lancaster is going to be able to recover from this and come back to racing, it remains to be seen. He's certainly not as young as Lauda was when he got burned. Lancaster, I think, is 48 years of age. So definitely a little bit older than Lauda was when he got horrendously burned. But here's to hoping that Lancaster is able to make it through. He's still, I think, listed in a serious to critical condition. I can't really remember. But he is at the Alabama burn unit. I forget what it was. I think it's Birmingham burn unit, I believe it is. But he is at a burn unit in Alabama, getting treatment, and hopefully his injuries aren't that serious. Although it definitely seems like he did suffer some second-degree burns from the fire. So, and hopefully his lungs aren't completely damaged from the fire. So, definitely a very scary situation for his family as well. And as a race fan, this is something that you just don't want to see, you know. And it sucks that something like this has to happen. It just goes to show you that even by today's standards, with all of the safety innovations and all that stuff, racing still is and always will be a dangerous sport, and it will be a very dangerous job. And sometimes a lot of us take that for granted. That despite all the safety innovations, this is still a very dangerous way to make a living. So, best wishes to Derek Lancaster and his entire family. Hopefully he'll be able to make a speedy and hopefully a full recovery as well. So, with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the review itself. So, my first thoughts on this race. Oh, I know some people are probably going to misconstrue what I'm about to say as, oh, you didn't think this race was good, did you? On the contrary, this race was actually pretty good. I mean, especially when you compare it to some of the races that we've seen this year, this was one of the best races of the year, bar none. Problem is, this was nowhere near as good as last year's running of the GEICO 500. GEICO 500 last year was the absolute cat's ass. I called it the gold standard. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 because it had a shit ton of lead changes, crazy strategy, and, you know, a crazy as all hell photo finish where Ryan Blaney won by 7 1,000ths of a second, which is just crazy close. Didn't really have that same feeling in this one today, because there were nowhere near as many lead changes, and there was a lot more of the choo-choo train going on this year than there was last year. So, yeah, this race was overall not as exciting as the one last year. Now, when you compare it to the rest of this season, this is without a doubt a very good race. No question about it. Definitely in the top 3 as far as races so far in the Cup Series. But when you compare it to the last 2 years and the last 2 spring races to this one, it doesn't even come close to what we saw the previous couple of years. It just doesn't. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this review. So, 2021 GEICO 500 at Talladega. Before the race even began, there was a lot of people who had to go to the rear of the field for either failing tech inspection twice or unapproved adjustments. Cody Ware was the only one that had to go to the rear of the field for tech inspection issues. The others went to the rear of the field for unapproved adjustments. BJ McLeod, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, and Daniel Suarez. So Alex Bowman technically started from the pole, but Logano was the control car. But it didn't really matter because Byron ended up leading lap 1 by the end of it. But Logano would get back in front, and we would have our first pure lead change of the day on lap 2. Give me 1 second. I got a drink. My throat was starting to dry out. Then Larson has to pit for a possible overheating issue, which, you know, on the very first lap was kind of unusual. And eventually the motor blows up. So he only ran a total of 4 laps. And it's like, well, what the hell happened? Somebody on his crew forgot to remove a piece of metal that was in between the grill opening and the radiator. So there was no air whatsoever going to the radiator, and it overheated in a hurry. And the engine was dead and gone by the end of lap 4. I would not be the least bit surprised if somebody at Hendrick lost their job over that, because that is dumb shit. So the High Line starts forming the choo-choo train, which we would see multiple times during this race. I know some people say, well, they're just, you know, being smart and conserving their equipment. While that may be true, it is boring as fuck to watch. And, you know, as someone who reviews these races, that's something I'm going to be calling out. I mean, I'm just going to call it like it is. It may be smart, but it's boring as fuck. You know, and I don't like, you know, sitting there, you know, for 3.5 hours watching a fucking conga line go around the high side. I don't like high-speed parades. I want to see some goddamn racing. Sorry that I have fucking standards. Anyway, Harvick dives to the inside to break up the high line. And we got our second pure lead change when Bubba Wallace takes over the lead on lap 12. Harvick moves up in front of Kez to get the push, and he goes to the lead for the first time on lap 15. At 3 wide through the field. And then Bubba Wallace gets back to the lead on lap 19. Kyle Busch actually leads for a bit on lap 22. That was our fifth pure lead change. At this point on lap 24, JGR cars were 1, 2, 3, 4. So a lot of them had to start from the rear of the field, but it doesn't really matter at Talladega. We had our first caution on lap 26. It was a competition caution, which was scheduled. Everyone comes in for service. Hamlin wins the race off pit road, and then we had our first wave of penalties. Harrison Burton, who was making his Cup Series debut, was penalized for taking the gas can with them. Basically took it out all the way to the front stretch where it finally fell off. Whoops. Truex would get caught for speeding on pit road, the first speeding penalty of the day, and Priest would be penalized for his crew going over the wall too soon, something that they would actually be penalized for twice in this race. Not very coordinated on that 3017 from the looks of it. Hamlin leads on the restart. Hamlin starts aggressively blocking to keep the lead. Almirola starts reporting a bad vibration, which initially they thought that it was a loose wheel, or maybe even a driveline problem. They would eventually find out later on there was actually a chip in the splitter that was causing the vibration. Yeah. Time to get rid of them fucking splitters. Let's just be completely honest here. We have our second caution. On lap 38, Joey Gase, who was running a Davey Allison memorial paint scheme for this race, spins in turn 4, possibly from a flat tire. Several drivers come in for service under this caution, mainly for fuel and tires. So Hamlin leads on the restart. Kez gets put in the middle and drops back through the field a little bit. Hamlin comes up, continues to block to try to keep the lead, but would lose the lead eventually to Ryan Blaney on lap 49. Then we had Matt DiBenedetto take over the lead on lap 51. Ryan Preece would actually move up to take the lead, coming back from his penalty on lap 55. Then DiBenedetto would take the lead on lap 57. So we're up to 9 pure lead changes at this point, and then the first stage would end under caution on lap number 60 with probably the wildest incident of the day. Hamlin nearly gets spun going into turn 3 by the 47, who was kind of bump drafted him. It was kind of an accordion effect on the high side. But the 11 nearly spins out, gets sent to Logano, which actually straightens the 11 car up. Logano gets spun to the inside, gets hit by the 47, and that launches the 22 into the air and goes over on its roof. And it slides down into Bubba Wallace, whose right side windshield basically clips the rear of Logano's car, which is very fortunate because if it was the front of the car, there would be nothing left of that 23 car. At least not enough to continue the race. So Bubba got extremely lucky there. Keselowski and Briscoe were actually also involved in this accident. So Kez was actually able to come back from an accident to be able to win this race. So Matt DiBenedetto wins stage 1 under caution. Everyone comes in for service. Elliott wins the race off pit road. Blaney actually ran out of fuel under yellow, but they were able to get the car refired. Stage 2 was 60 laps. Chase Elliott leads the start of stage 2. Hamlin gets a push from Matt DiBenedetto to retake the lead on the restart, but DiBenedetto would take it back on lap 69. Then William Byron would have a stint at the lead, at least for a lap, on lap 72. And then Denny Hamlin would retake the lead on lap 73. So we're at 12 pure lead changes at this point. But then the outside lane would be the dominant lane once again, and we would get the choo-choo train once again. But then we started seeing some manufacturer strategies for this one. A group of Chevys would come in for green flag pit stops on lap 85. Suarez and Ross Chastain would be nabbed for speeding. Then the Fords come in for service on lap 93 right before the halfway point, and then the Toyotas come in on the very next lap. And as a result, Harvick, Chris Buescher, and Hamlin are penalized for speeding. Ryan Preece, who was a part of the first group that stopped, assumes the race lead, and then Hamlin gets caught speeding again, serving the previous speed penalty. So he was the first one to get the double whammy on pit road. Then we got our 13th pure lead change on lap 101 when William Byron takes over the lead when they encountered some lap traffic, and that kind of shook Priest from the lead a little bit when he was trying to figure out, okay, where are these lap cars going? Because they actually came up to try to stay on the lead lap, but then Priest kind of came back down to try to get around them, and almost got turned around. Then we had our 4th caution on lap 103 when Kurt Busch dropped some fluid on the track from a leaking oil line, which actually caught fire, but he was able to recover and actually finish the race, even though it was multiple laps down. So several drivers coming for service at this point. Byron leads on the restart. DiBenedetto would take over the lead on lap 111, and then Bubba Wallace would take the lead on lap 112 for a 15th pure lead change of the day. Kyle Busch gets a run on Matty D for the lead, but nearly turns the 21 off of turn 4, which sent both of them underneath the yellow line. They would lose spots because of it. And of course, typically you would think, well, would either of them get penalized for going below the double yellow line? In this case, would Matty D get penalized for pushing Kyle Busch below the yellow line? They decided to let it go because DiBenedetto nearly got turned by Kyle Busch because Kyle Busch had a run, and Busch, basically got pushed to the inside because DiBenedetto got loose, So they determined that to be a racing incident and just let bygones be bygones. They got back in line and continued racing. So NASCAR decided to let bygones be bygones, and they didn't gain any positions out of it anyways. They, in fact, lost spots because of that. So there was lots of jockeying at the front. Bubba Wallace was actually the one who took advantage of the little schmozzle between the 21 and 18. So he took over the lead. McDowell was loose down the backstretch. That car was loosey-goosey on this run. And then we get our 5th caution on lap 120. So much like the first stage, the second stage went under caution. Denny Hamlin gets put in the wall by Truex after Keselowski comes up and blocks the move. Which, I don't know why Denny Hamlin was trying to drive so aggressively to get back on the lead lap, considering the fact that he was going to be the free pass car. I mean, was it really worth it, to risk, your shot at the win just to get back on the lead lap the hard way? I mean, what good is that going to do you? What's the point? He ended up with a wrecked race car as a result, so definitely not Hamlin's smartest move, to say the least. But maybe that was karmic retribution for what happened back in the fall, so it all equals out in the end, I suppose. This consequently took out the 3 remaining Hendrick cars that were still in the race. Elliott, Bowman, and Byron go through the grass. Bowman's 6-minute damaged vehicle policy timer would actually run out on him, and he would have to retire from the race, which I'm just going to be completely honest here. The damaged vehicle policy is fucking stupid. It is. 6 minutes is just not enough time to give these teams ample time to repair their race cars. And if the timer runs out, then you have to retire from the race. It's just fucking stupid as far as I'm concerned. They either need to amend it or get rid of it. That's just my opinion on the matter. Everyone comes in for service, and Blaney wins the race off of pit road. So stage number 3, 68 laps. So 8 laps longer than the other ones. Several cars actually came in to top off their fuel tank, which was a smart move on their part. So Ryan Blaney leads the start of stage 3. As it turned out, though, Blaney picked up a large piece of Barabond, like the backing off of Barabond, on the front of his car, and it was overheating his car a little bit. So at this point, the choo-choo train formed again. Woohoo! But Blaney actually did a smart move. He got out from behind, or he got out from the lead, and let Almirola duck down under him to take over the race lead. And then he got behind Almirola, and the difference in air pressure between the two cars eventually lifted that debris off the front of the 12 car. So that was a smart move on his part. So we had our 16th pure lead change with Almirola taking over the lead. And he would maintain that for the next 16 laps due to the fact that the outside lane was in a choo-choo train. But then Ross Chastain, thankfully, tried to break this up by leading a pack of cars on the inside lane which would actually work out for him because he made it up to the lead and took it on lap 148. Then Kevin Harvick made his way up to the front, and he started dueling with Chastain for the lead, and they would actually trade the lead back and forth a few times. Harvick took it on lap 153, then Chastain took it back 2 laps later, and then Harvick took it back the next lap. So we're up to 20 pure lead changes at this point. A large group of cars led by Chastain come in with 33 laps to go. Stenhouse spins and hits the inside wall. Looks like he got wrecked by somebody on the... couldn't really tell what happened there, but he hits the inside wall. But there was no caution for this because he was able to get it back under control. And it was at this point that Newman gets nabbed for speeding, and he is the other driver that would get the double whammy because he sped, serving his speeding penalty, which is a shame. Harvick leads a second group on the pit road on lap 159. Blaney actually had a poor pit stop. He lost the draft. We had our 21st pure lead change when Ross Chastain took over the lead on lap 162. Then Eric Jones leads a group on the outside lane and takes the lead on lap number 170 for our 22nd pure lead change of the day. Then we get our 6th caution on lap 172 when Quinn Houff blows a tire and smacks the wall. He had some damage from an earlier wreck. So a lot of cars come in for service. Fuel was a little bit of an issue before this caution, but after this caution it was no longer an issue. Jones leads on the restart, but then Matty D goes to the lead on the restart with a great push. Blaney makes a move to the outside with Keselowski in tow. The high line starts prevailing once again. Truex reports a deflating right rear tire, but for some reason does not go to pit road. Byron tries to lead the group on the inside. Then we have our 7th and final caution on lap 185 when Truex's right rear tire finally comes apart and it leaves the carcass in the middle of the racetrack. Yeah, not a very high IQ move by Truex right there. I mean, I don't know why he didn't decide to go to pit road right there. That one just kind of escapes me. So we're going to overtime. Matty D leads the first overtime. Actually makes it around, leading to the white flag. And then going into turn 1, De Benedetto goes up high to block Blaney's advance, but he leaves the bottom open for Keselowski, who gets a big push from Michael McDowell, who, as we know, is a really good super speedway racer. So Keselowski manages to get out in front. But Blaney actually has a great run on the outside, and it looks like he's going to be able to push Matty D back up there and maybe make this a battle for the win. Until Tyler Reddick, in his infinite wisdom, he was behind the 12. He could have pushed, gotten in line behind the 12 and the 21 and helped push them and made this a battle and maybe get a better finish for himself. But instead, he decides, I'm just going to go to the outside and make it 3 wide and completely kill everybody's momentum in the middle and outside line. Yeah, I hope that 7th place was worth it, Reddick. You fucking idiot. So, I mean, that basically left Keselowski with not really a whole lot of challenge. At least until we got to the front stretch when McDowell made a move to the outside to try to go for the win, which was actually a smart move. Because it's nice that he actually tried to make the fucking move going through the tri-oval. William Byron, on the other hand, decided instead of going with a guy who probably wasn't going to be much of a threat in the playoff, he decides to go with the guy who is going to be a threat for the championship now. You know, and that line of thinking just makes no fucking sense to me. Instead of going with McDowell, he went with Keselowski, and Keselowski would end up as the winner of this race, which was a bit of a buzzkill because I think a lot of us were hoping for a first-time winner, which would have been, I think, the 199th different time that we've had a driver win in the Cup Series. But instead, it's the status quo. And I say it's the status quo because Brad Keselowski won his 6th victory at Talladega. Well, we only led 1 lap. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? That's a common occurrence at Talladega. I mean, so who gives a shit? Oh, we only led 1 lap. You know, big fucking whoop. It just means that he was smart with his car, and made the moves when they counted the most. So, I'm not faulting Keselowski for the win. It was a great win. It was just a bit of a buzzkill because, let's be honest here, if we would have had a first-time winner like, say, a Ross Chastain, who actually, him and Eric Jones actually ended up in crashes at the end of it. Jones was spun on the tri-oval, and then Chastain got loose coming to the line and hit the inside wall. Thankfully, both drivers were okay. But, yeah, it would have been nice to see Matt DiBenedetto get that 100th win for the Wood brothers, especially since they lost a family member earlier this year. I forget who it was. God damn it. My mind's drawing a blank on it now. But, yeah, it would have been nice. And it would have been nice for DiBenedetto to get his first career win. And his first career win be the Wood brothers' 100th. I mean, that would have been a cool deal. And it would have been the first time since Neil Bonnet won with the team in 1980 that the Wood brothers had won at Talladega. They've won at Talladega 5 different times. They won 3 times with David Pearson. I forget who the other one was. But David Pearson won 3 times for them. There was another driver who won for them. And then the last one was 1980 with Neil Bonnet. So it would have been nice to see that 21 car back in victory lane and for it to be their 100th win. But, you know, it is what it is. But it was yet another last lap pass, though, for Brad Keselowski at Talladega, getting his 35th career win, I believe it is. And that was our 23rd and final pure lead change of the day, coming at the checkered flag. So it was a good race, and it was a good finish. And, you know, one big plus that comes out of this, even though we did have some accidents that had like 4 to 5 cars involved, we didn't see the big one. You know, the huge crash that usually happens all the time at Talladega and Daytona, where it takes out like 10 to 20 cars every time it happens. So if there's one good thing that came out of this race is that we didn't see the big one. You know, the less we see of those, the better, honestly, because that means, you know, less wreck race cars. Because, I mean, wreck race cars are extremely expensive for these race teams. And considering that some of these race teams are strapped for cash as it is, you know, for some of them to come out here with minimal damage, I think is a good thing. So that's my point on that. So let's get some stats going here. So overall lead changes. We had 35 overall lead changes in this race with 23 pure lead changes, which I believe are highs for the year. Pretty good. Until you learn that last year's GEICO 500 had 56 overall lead changes with 43 pure lead changes. So this race barely amassed half of what last year's GEICO 500 hit in terms of overall lead changes and pure lead changes. Not to mention the fact that we saw the choo-choo train a little bit too much in this race. So this race was a good race, don't get me wrong. It's certainly in the top 3 races of this season in the Cup Series, but let's be completely honest here. This race was nowhere near as good as last year's. You know, and that's what you're going to have to judge it against. I mean, super speedway racing is its own beast. So it's going to be compared to, you know, same races that were run the year prior. And let's be honest here, the race that was run a year prior was a hell of a lot better than this one. No, that's just how I look at it. And overall cautions, we had 7 cautions on the day. So there you go. I mean, let's be honest here, this race wasn't as messy as it could have been. It certainly, sure as hell wasn't as messy as Martinsville was in terms of caution flags and wrecks. Even though we did have some multi-car accidents, they weren't big ones. So I think we can come out of that with a plus. Race results for the GEICO 500. So Brad Keselowski with the win, led the last lap. Only led 1 lap, but it's the most important one. William Byron comes home in 2nd. Michael McDowell in 3rd. He needed a good run because the past couple races have been kind of rough for him since his Daytona 500 victory. But top 5 finish at Talladega is always good. Kevin Harvick in 4th. Even though he has not won yet this year, he has been running pretty good. Just hasn't been able to get to victory lane. Matt DiBenedetto comes home in the 5th position, leading 28 laps. Denny Hamlin actually ended up leading the most laps in the day with 43, but ended up multiple laps down. How about Kaz Grala in the 16 car, coming home with a top 10 finish? It's a name you don't really hear all that often, at least in the Cup Series. He's usually a Truck Series driver. But came home with a top 10 today. Tyler Reddick, the fucking idiot, who basically ruin any chance that he had, along with Ryan Blaney and Matt DiBenedetto, to win the race. He ends up 7th. His teammate Austin Dillon in 8th, Ryan Blaney in 9th. So no third Talladega victory, at least this time. And Cole Custer comes home with a top 10. I think that's his first top 10 finish of the year, if memory serves me correctly. Well, let's find out. Point standings. Well, he's not even in the top 20 points, so we can't really find out. But I believe that is Cole Custer's first top 10 finish of the year. But let's go through the top 10 or the top 20 in points. 10 races into the season, 26 to go. Man, we still got a long season ahead of us. And we're not even fucking a third of the way through it yet. So Hamlin continues to lead the way in the points. There were many people wondering, if Hamlin doesn't get any wins, would he get into the playoff, despite the fact that he didn't have any wins? If there's more than 16 drivers who get wins. Yes, Hamlin would be able to get in because he is the points leader. The regular season champion automatically gets into the playoffs as the number 1 seed, and then the remaining 15 will be getting in based on race wins. So if for some dumb reason Hamlin does not win by the time we get to Daytona in late summer, which would be amazing, all things considered, Hamlin, if he is still the points leader and wins the regular season championship, would get into the playoff based on that. Although I have a feeling that Hamlin will get to victory lane at some point between now and Daytona. Truex, the only multi-time winner so far this year, is second in points, 87 back. Logano, who went for the flippy-flip today, is third. William Byron in fourth. Recovered nicely from that spin at the end of stage 2 to get a runner-up finish. Ryan Blaney in fifth. Keselowski with his first win of the year. Only 4 top 10s all year, but gets his first win of the season, is sixth in points. Harvick, 7th in the points, and then Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and Christopher Bell round out the top 10. You have Kyle Busch in the 18 and 11th, Austin Dillon, Michael McDowell, Alex Bowman, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Chris Buescher has moved his way into the top 16. Those are the top 16 drivers at the moment. And then you have Matt DiBenedetto, who started the season out not so good, was pretty low in points, but he's clawed his way back into the running for a playoff spot. You have Kurt Busch, Ryan Newman, and Bubba Wallace rounding out the top 20. As for my final rating for the GEICO 500 at Talladega for 2021, like I said, it was definitely one of the best races of the year by far. It was certainly a hell of a lot better than some of the races we've seen this year, but let's be completely honest here. This race was nowhere near as good as last year's. So it's definitely not getting a 10 out of 10, I'll tell you that much. But considering that this is the most competitive race we've seen this season, and we didn't get, we didn't have a big one, and we still had a different winner, all things considered, I am still going to give this race a very solid 8 on the fuel gauge. So I'm going to give this race an 8 out of 10, which is still a damn good score, to say the least, considering how strict I can be with my scoring. So an 8 out of 10 for the GEICO 500 this season. I mean, it was still a damn good race, don't get me wrong. I mean, did you watch the Atlanta race? That race was god-awful. The Daytona 500 was trash. Richmond was a poop stain. I mean, there have been a few races this year that have been fucking garbage. So in comparison, this race felt like a breath of fresh air. It's just a shame that, it wasn't as good as the previous year. And it had that potential, but, it is what it is. But that's going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. And your review of the GEICO 500 from Talladega. Next week, they go to the Kansas Speedway for their first race there of 2. So, that'll come next week. And then I believe, let's see what's coming up on the schedule real quick. 2021 NASCAR Cup Series. So, coming up is Kansas, and then Darlington on May the 9th, which is now the home for the throwback weekend, since Darlington now has 2 races this year, one on Mother's Day and then the other one on Labor Day. They wanted to leave the Southern 500 as kind of its own thing because, you know, history, and then move Throwback Weekend to the spring race, you know, which is fine. Then after that is Dover, the one and only time they're going to Dover this year. Thank fucking God. Rest of the races in May. May the 23rd, Circuit of the Americas. Yes, sir, Bob. And then, of course, at the end of the year, Memorial Day weekend, the Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday, May the 30th. So that's what the schedule looks like for the month of May. We're actually through the month of April now in terms of the Cup Series. This was the last race for April. So we're heading into the month of May, which of course is the Indianapolis 500 as well. So the month of May has Kansas next week, and then Darlington for Throwback Weekend, Dover on May the 16th, Circuit of the Americas on May the 23rd, and then Coca-Cola 600 on May the 30th. So 5 straight Sundays in May for the Cup Series. And that's what we have to look forward to next month for the NASCAR Cup Series. But that's going to do it for tonight here on The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later.
Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you rats!